Welcome everybody, Stephen Howe here, and today we have a very special interview. I am excited to bring on Blair Clark, and she is
Hello.
one-on-one mentoring students, and so we have something really cool in store for you. In this kind of case study slash interview series, I wanted to bring on Blair because she just hit a really cool milestone in her real estate investing and wholesaling journey. And I think it'll be very inspiring for those of you watching this just to kind of hear her story, what she has going on. And we're going to talk a little bit about the meat and potatoes and the specifics of the deal that she just accomplished, which was a $20,000 real estate deal, which is nothing to bat an eye at, or whatever the phrase is there. It's a very big milestone, and that's something I want to do is really celebrate this with Blair. It's a huge accomplishment getting her first deal done. So let's just get right into it. So Blair, welcome.
Good morning. Good
Welcome.
morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Doing fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, why don't we just kind of open things up and catch everyone up to speed of where you were at before you joined the one-on-one mentoring program, maybe a little bit about where you're located in the country, what you were doing for a living, and those type of things. And I'll kind of kick it over to you here.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everybody. All right, can you see me all right? That still sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, awesome. Awesome. So my name is Blair Clark, and I am in the Metro Detroit area in Michigan. And the weather right now has been really, really wonky. It was negative like 35 with the wind chill last week, and this week it is positive 40. So that's Michigan living. And so I found Steve Howell on YouTube, as I know many of you have. Like, clearly you're watching him on YouTube right now. And I used to teach elementary school, and I'm a mom of two boys. They are 3.5 and 1.25, and they are a handful. And then I'm married to a high school choir teacher who is also an associate pastor at our church. So we do a lot. We're involved in teen ministry. And so my journey in a nutshell is I knew that I was going to be a teacher until I retired. And then I started teaching, and I realized that I love teaching and I love working with people and I love sharing knowledge, but I do not like the bureaucracy of the establishment of teaching. And then also I graduated college in 2008, which was the worst time in my history to graduate and try to look for a job, especially a job that was, you were paid by the government, like what the government could afford to pay you. Because for those of you who don't know, 2008 was when everything like crumbled, and especially like the real estate market, like everything just crumbled and fell. And so I got into teaching at the worst possible time. I actually waited tables for almost a year after I graduated before I even found a teaching job. And then I taught elementary school for 5 years, and I loved it, but I just felt like there was supposed to be something different for me. And then for those of you who were like involved in spirituality, like I just really felt like God had something different for me, but he didn't share what that was with me. But I just had this like feeling like I need to do something different. And I actually come from a long line of entrepreneurs, like from my great grandfather to my father, they've all been business owners. And I'm actually like the first person, because I'm my parents' only child. So it's like there's a bunch of like men, and then there's me, and they were all entrepreneurs. And so I'm the first one who like went to college and like got in a like rote career. And I thought that was what I was supposed to do, because I love children and I like education, but I just never felt like I wanted to do things this way and I couldn't. There's just like this feeling of limitation when you are stuck in a type of job, whether it's education or you're in the corporate world or anything like that. Like, if you have a boss over you, whether it's an administrator or a CEO or something like that, you have to play by the rules and you have to follow the parameters. And it also means that your salary is usually capped as well. And so basically, even though it was education, I just felt like I was working towards someone else's goals. I never really got to work toward my goals. And so I feel like God was just telling me, like in that 5th year of teaching, like, you were supposed to go to college and you were supposed to do this. You gathered like these different skill sets. So it's not like I had wasted time or anything like that. But now there is something else for you to do. And that's really scary. Like when you have identified yourself as this type of person in this type of role, telling your husband, telling your parents, even though your parents are entrepreneurs, that you want to leave your safe position and you want to just launch into something and you don't even know what it is and you can't even like define it. It's scary. It's scary to make that leap. I actually sat on that information or that feeling for like months before I even had the courage to tell my husband, who is awesome and so supportive, and was just like, yeah, whatever it is that God has for you, let's just go for it. Let's pursue it, because he's a full-time teacher as well. So we didn't have children at the time. We could live on that income. And so I just launched into 5 more years of fumbling around, not knowing what I was doing. Like I've shared with Steve that I tried fitness marketing. I tried mommy blogging. I tried launching ebooks and audiobooks on different things. And I made like this much money doing all of that stuff. It was a lot of fun. And I learned that I can incorporate education into it. I love marketing. I love being online and networking with people. I love talking with people. So what I really gained from that is I love marketing. I love educating people, and I love networking. And so just by like happenstance, we fell into real estate. We were in a position where I wasn't making like any money with any of the marketing that we were doing. We were just about to have our first son. His name's Jack. Jack was like just a few months from being born, and we were really struggling with paying our bills. Like we were to a point where it was like, we're going to make our student loan payment or we're going to make our mortgage payment. And so we would pick and choose like from month to month, where are we going to be in the red? Like, how are we going to do it this month? And it was really, really, really stressful. And so because, you know, my husband's a pastor and we are praying people, we took it to prayer and we prayed. And the word that I got was sell your house, which was not what I was looking for. The word that I wanted from God was, I'm just going to send you like a $50,000 check in the mail. It's all good. Like, I got you covered. That doesn't actually happen. No. Or I wanted God to say, like, do this business venture and I will, you know, like send you thousands of dollars so you can pay your bills. But that wasn't the answer. The answer was sell your house. So we talked with a realtor and we looked at our house, and from the time that we had purchased it till that present time, this was in 2015 when we were going to sell our house, we had like almost $40,000 in equity in our home, because the market had gone up since we bought our house. Like, we bought low and we were going to sell high. That was my first experience with even the idea of buy low, sell high. So we saw that we had this like chunk, this big decent chunk of money that we could get from a real estate transaction if we were to sell our house. So we made a major life shift. We decided to sell our house. My parents invited us to live in their basement, the finished basement, so it was fine. But I was about to have our first baby, and that's not really what I envisioned. Like, I'm going to live in my parents' basement. It's a nice basement, but I'm going to live in my parents' basement when I have my first baby, and I'm 30. Like, I'm 30 at this time. And I'm like, this is just not where I saw my life going. And I felt like defeated and like I'm a loser. Like, I have to sell my house so that we don't go bankrupt or whatever. And so we sold our house. We made that money, and I got the bug. Like, the bug bit me. And from there, I was like, we bought low and we sold high. We didn't even know what we were doing. That's just what ended up happening. And I said to John Paul, my husband, John Paul, I said, I want to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
So the next house that we bought a few months later, we bought a little fixer-upper, and
Mm-hmm.
we fixed it up. We put as little money as we could. It was just a cosmetic fixer-upper. And then we sold that, and we turned a pretty decent profit. We made a little over $20,000 doing that.
Nice.
And so I said, so the next house that we buy, I want this to be an income earning home. And so the home that we currently live in now, it's a 2-unit home,
Mm-hmm.
and we live on the main floor, and we have a full basement. We have about 1,500 square feet and then a full basement. And then up above us, we have about a 700 square foot apartment, completely closed off, second unit. We bought the home that way. We were searching for a 2-unit home, and we got it at a really great deal. And we have a tenant in there, and the tenant's rent pays
Mm-hmm.
for almost 3/4 of our mortgage. And so we've just been on this trail of like using real estate to kind of like replace my income and just, leverage different things. And so a little over a year ago, we went to a real estate seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those like broad strokes. If you guys can hear my son roaring like a dinosaur in the background, I apologize. Do you hear that?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're watching dinosaur cartoons in the living room.
That's awesome.
So we went to a real estate seminar, and like I said, it was just like the surface level. It covered like anything that you could possibly do as a real estate investor, and that was the theme. If you are in real estate, come and learn how to build your brand as a realtor. Come and learn how to own rental property and be a property manager. Learn how to start an LLC. Learn how to buy property, no money down, that type of a thing. So we learned all of these different things, and what really, really turned us on during this seminar was wholesaling, assignment of contract. We learned about this thing that we had never heard of before, and we literally thought, is this even real? Is it even legal? Like, how is this even a possibility that you can just acquire a piece of paper and push it over to somebody else and then make money in the in-between without putting any money yourself down?
Mm-hmm.
So after we left that conference, the conference, you had to pay for it to go to it. And that was a very reasonable fee. And then they wanted to take you further down a specific avenue. And what they were charging to take you down that specific avenue was not reasonable. They wanted just a ridiculous amount of money for like another 3-day weekend. It was just absolutely ridiculous. So we said, no, thank you. We're not going to pursue this any further. It was just one of those big real estate education things. Like I see ads for them like all the time, all over YouTube and all over my Facebook feed and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was just like for what they were charging for another 3-day weekend, it's like, well, we could just go buy a house and flip it ourselves and fumble our way through it for like, just tens of thousands of dollars that they were charging.
Exactly. Yep.
So we came home and we prayed, and we just gotten into the habit of one of the first things that we do is when we want to do something, we get really excited about it. And then we say, okay, let's pray. Let's pray and just kind of, center ourselves a little bit and get organized with our thoughts here. And so we prayed, and I went on to YouTube, and I just expected YouTube Academy just to teach me exactly how to do this wholesaling thing. And that's when I came across your videos, and it was that first video that you have, the first video that I saw. It's about an hour long, and you go through, it's like wholesaling step by step. And you take us through the process of like, acquiring probate leads and like getting your mindset right. And this is how I do things on my PowerPoint. And like you gave like the whole formula away in like this one video. And so I just started following you, and I just started watching more of your videos. And then you started talking about how you were also a Christian. And so I told my husband, I'm like, John Paul, this is the guy. Like, this is the guy. Like, this is the answer to our prayers. And I signed up for your email newsletter. I don't even know why. Like, maybe you promoted it in a video, and you sent an email just saying like, hey, I'm taking students on, and I'm going to be doing some one-on-one coaching. And you listed your fee and for, the entire year of coaching. And I'm just like, this is it. like, this is it. And so we hopped on that conference call with you, and we talked with you, and that was a few months ago. I believe it was last May. And so we hit the ground running from there. And taking that step with you has bridged the gap of, like I said, I just felt like I fumbled around for the last 5 years, but actually, like, you know, taking that step with you has actually, like, taken all that stuff, brought it in, and really turned it into something like solid and concrete and tangible.
Awesome. Well, Blair, oh my goodness, there's so many things that you mentioned there that just like from explaining the line of entrepreneurs in your family to kind of having that entrepreneur spirit, to committing things to prayer, to the different real estate seminars out there, just so many things like I resonate with, and I'm sure those of you watching this video can resonate with as well. And so definitely want to dive into the big accomplishment that you just did. So just to catch everyone up to speed too, when we started working together, aside from the properties that you were living in and flipping and renting out and stuff like that, did you have any sort of a real estate operation going, or any sort of marketing that you guys had up and running that you were doing?
Prior to getting with you?
Yes.
No. So prior to getting with you, all that we knew was we had a few friends who had rental properties, and they had those rental properties under an LLC just for their own, like, legal security, just to separate, their business, that income from their personal finances. So that's really all that we knew. So we set up an LLC just for our rental property, but everything else that we did, we were just doing it, just like really figuring things out on our own. And we have a lot of people in our family who are in some sort of different contractor field, like whether it's electrician or a builder or like brick mason. Someone owns a flooring company. So we have a lot of people from like the building like perspective of it, and then also some friends who are in the rental property. But we were just like flying by the seat of our pants. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. And that's part of the reason why we went to that real estate conference. It was a 3-day weekend, and we're just like, we just need to go and figure out, like, what are we even doing? And so, so then getting connected with you and all of the teaching that you provide in your modules has just really honed everything in. And we actually feel like we're legit business operators now. We're not just like out there doing stuff.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of the connections you met, like with the story about the transaction that we just completed, just so cool and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm so honored and blessed to have you guys, and it's so interesting when you guys took it to prayer. When I started coaching and mentoring people about 4 years ago, I actually prayed about the type of people specifically I wanted to work with, and it's so, I was just having a conversation with my wife about this, like, looking back at the students I've worked with over the years, it's like that was definitely an answered prayer from God. And it's just stories exactly like this, just how people have been led, like we've crossed paths, and it's just been a huge blessing. So
yeah,
very honored to hear that, and it's something I don't take lightly, and just very thankful for it as well. Let's talk about your huge accomplishment. So just recently in the greater Detroit area, crushed out a 20K deal. So I got a couple questions here for you on it. So just in a nutshell here, how did you come across this deal, this 20K deal? Where did it come from? And then we'll talk about some of the specifics of it.
Okay. So one thing that I would not have thought to do outside of your mentorship is not just to contact the homeowner. One thing that you taught was to also, excuse me, was to also contact any probate attorney. So what we are focusing on with Stephen specifically is just probate marketing. We're not going for people in any other sort of distressed homeownership situation. And so outside of just marketing to homeowners, I'm also marketing to the attorney. So I've shared this with you, Stephen, I somehow developed a really positive professional relationship with a probate attorney who thinks that I am like big time. I don't know where he got that idea from. I guess because he liked my business card when I sent it to him. I don't know. So he has been feeding me leads. And one of the leads that he fed me was actually the son of the homeowners. So his parents are very elderly. He had to put them in a nursing home, and then he became their power of attorney. So while he's in the attorney's office setting all of this stuff up, he mentions to his attorney, like, I really need to just sell my parents' home. It's in terrible condition. They've never updated it. They've lived in it since 1958, and they've never updated it. And just in their old age, they've really let it go. And so and this is what the seller tells me. The seller tells me, my attorney hands me your card and says, give Blair a call. This is what she does. She will help you out. And so this guy just gives me a call. He's in the attorney's office. Like at that time, they have me on speakerphone, and I just talk things out with him. And then that's how we developed the relationship and did the deal from there, was from a probate attorney lead. So,
yeah.
I felt like I was playing make-believe for a little while, but I think you just kind of have to do that till you get yourself established.
Yeah, taking that leap of faith. And I know it feels awkward in the beginning when you're like, I'm not fully established yet. I don't, but it takes that initial, getting moving. And so that's so awesome. And so one of the great lead sources that's been just one of my best lead sources over this last decade is probate. And so, Blair, you mentioned that's one thing we focus on. There's certainly other things we do, but one of the biggest mistakes that I made, in that just with talking with hundreds of people over the years and coaching hundreds of people, it's so easy to think we need to do like 12 different things, and we try a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, but the effort that's going into each thing, just kind of what I call like dinking and dunking around, it's like it just doesn't get us anywhere. And then we get frustrated, and then we watch another video or another seminar, another training, and it's like, well, maybe this is the thing. And after a while, that really starts to wear people down. And so I was blessed in the beginning, after a couple of years of making mistakes and trying a million, and then do some other things. And so you mentioned probate, and that's one of the things we focus on. And like one of the things, even with students, sometimes they'll be intimidated naturally to market to the probate attorneys, and just intimidated by that conversation. And it just goes to show that like they're people too, and like it's not a terribly difficult conversation, and like one attorney can filter you so many leads. So it's just so cool to to hear that you really pursued that avenue. And I remembered us having some conversations where in the beginning, making some of the calls, reaching out, kind of had to psych yourself up a little bit to do it at first. Yeah,
for sure.
So let's just go over the high level numbers here of the deal. What was the ARV of the deal? What is it worth if it were fixed up in perfect condition? And then a ballpark of like the repairs, and then what we got it for, what we wholesaled it for. What do those numbers look like, Blair?
Yeah. So not being a real estate agent or having any sort of real estate experience, this is the first thing that I had really ever done without a realtor holding my hand. And so that's something that in your coaching classes, you teach us exactly how to go to certain websites and pull that information and put all of this together. And it's a little bit time consuming, but it's actually not very difficult to do at all. So the ARV that we put together on the home after repair value, we figured it at about $140,000. And just because of the state of the home, different things like it needed a new roof and just different things, it not really being cared for since probably like the 80s and never updated. We figured that the investor would have to put in about 50 to 60,000, and then we actually acquired the property for $25,000. So the area where the home was, so I mentioned that I'm in the Metro Detroit area, but I'm actually far away from Detroit. Metro Detroit is a huge area. So the actual city is getting better. For anybody who's familiar with Detroit, it's getting better. It's coming back. But I live in the burbs. So I live in the suburbs. And so that's where this home was. It's actually a really dumpy home in a really nice area. So like the worst house on the street. It was just a beautiful wooded area with really nice homes, very desirable. A lot of white collar people live in this area and then they drive into the city. Mm-hmm. So acquiring a home like that in this area for so little, I knew that we were going to do an awesome deal with it. I was really, really excited.
Absolutely. And just like hearing those numbers, and for those of you watching this video, like you may think like if you've just been exposed to wholesaling, like how is it possible to take a house that could be worth 140 and get it for 25? And I'll admit, like those numbers, like it's a home run deal. I mean, a lot of times wholesale prices, we might be getting things for 50 cents on the dollar. So getting that house for 50K, 60K, 70K, but getting it for 25K was incredible. And it is so possible. And, being able to help, the seller whose parents were in the nursing home and needed the money for those reasons, and the house being built in the 50s and being so dated and needing so much work, it actually worked out for all parties. The attorney was happy, seller's happy, we're happy, the buyer was happy. So it's so possible. And so, it just was really neat to see that come about. Let's talk a little bit about just any challenging points about the deal. Was there any challenging points, or did it get tough, or, anything there? And then we'll talk about how, bringing in the buyer and just kind of what that process was like for you.
Okay. So this actually was not a challenging deal to go through it all. And I know that I mentioned to you throughout, like, I couldn't believe how smooth everything was going. It was almost eerie. Like you expected something at some point, somebody to get upset, somebody to get frustrated, somebody to reject something and want to negotiate, but everything went so smoothly. So I have to preface this with saying that I marketed to well over 100 people before getting this deal under contract. So I signed up with Stephen in May. My husband being a teacher, we really didn't do a whole lot over the summer. So we really didn't launch anything until September when he went back to school, because we just had a summer full of a whole bunch of stuff. So I say that to say that, like, I really started my marketing in September, and I didn't close the deal until mid-January. So, it took me, it took me 3.5 months, which it took me longer than that. I mean, I started with you in May and I didn't close till mid-January, but I just want to say to anybody, who's watching this, like, I've been doing this for a couple of months and nothing is happening. And I have some people on the line and there's a little bit of interest. Like, you will have to market to a lot of people. Like, you might have a 1% success rate. You might have a 0.5% success rate. Like, I marketed to well over 100 people, and then all of the real estate attorneys that were attached to that. So I had a ton of letters and a ton of phone calls and a ton of emails out there before I even got someone in who said, okay, let's do this. So I think the most challenging part about the whole process leading up to your first deal is sticking with it and not letting those voices talk to you. Well, they talk to you, but not believing them. Those little voices that sit on your shoulder, like, you're never going to get a deal. Like, if you do get a deal, it's just going to fall through. You're never really going to make any money. If you do get a deal, you're never going to be able to sell it. Just different things like that. So I think the most challenging part for me was just not giving into, like, the negative garbage that goes through your head when you're trying to do something for the first time. And then when we finally got the deal on the line and we made the initial offer that we made to him was for $30,000, just the verbal over the phone. And I couldn't believe it. When I delivered the offer, I was actually in the grocery store. So this seller was actually kind of hard to get a hold of. He's an engineer, he's really busy. And so anytime that he called me, I would take his call, because I would be calling him back and calling him back and calling him back before I would get a hold of him sometimes. Or I would be texting him and, like, 3 days later, he'd finally respond. So when he called me, I had left him a voicemail saying, you know, I want to make an offer to you. And when he called me and I'm grocery shopping, I don't have my notes. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I'm just like riffing off the top of my head. And I'm standing there in the produce section and I'm just like, I have to take this call or I won't hear from him for 3 days. And so I just fumble through my little spiel and I deliver the offer, the verbal offer of $30,000. And he's like, yeah, sounds good. Whatever. I'm like, okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I just kept doing my grocery shopping. And then I'm walking around the grocery store, like leaving you a Voxer of like, oh my God, Steve, he took the offer. I can't believe it. It's insane. And so then we collected ourselves and we ran the numbers a little bit harder and we decided, just with some certain variables, like this house was, you know, had a well, not city water. It was on a septic system, just because it was a little more of, you know, out in the country type of a setting. And it was a pretty small home for the area too. This is, you know, that the type of area where there's just the big giant sprawling, you know, neighborhoods. And this was a smaller little, you know, kind of on the outside of that. So anyway, we ended up giving him the written final, like hard, solid offer of $25,000. And like having that conversation with you, you were like, we can keep it at 30 or we can go to 25. And I was like, let's go to 25. I just felt that was right. I felt 25 was going to be like the number. Yeah. And emailing him the written offer and then having to wait. This guy was busy. He didn't get back with me for like 36 hours. And then he texts me, sounds good, signed it and sent it. And I was just like, are you kidding? Like, he's not even going to try to negotiate. He's just like, whatever, I don't care. I don't care. And that's the thing about probate marketing is you will deal with a lot of people who they're either super emotionally or wrapped up in the house that means so much to them, or they are like, whatever, it's not my house. I just need the money. And that was this type of scenario. So yeah, the legality of it all, you know, like working through it was really easy. But you know, the biggest challenge was just like not allowing myself to defeat myself.
Yeah, the internal dialogue going on is one of the most challenging things. And a couple of things that you said are so true. And this deal reminds me of years ago, one of my first deals, and just that eerie silence when they're just like, okay, or I'll have to think about it. But they didn't say no to the offer. And then they get back like a couple of days later with like, okay, let's do it. And you're like, whoa. And sometimes we don't prepare ourselves, like, what happens if this goes exactly how I want it to, like in the grocery store when they're like, okay, let's do it. And then the other thing is, you know, with doing this type of marketing, it's not always that we're not like changing somebody's mind or anything like that. It's the deals that I found that are the deals, like they're just ready to go for the most part. Sometimes like they're not ready now and they're ready a few months from now, and we'll plant that little seed. But for the most part, like they're ready to go now, and it's not that we're saying anything grandiose or changing their mind or giving them this amazing sales pitch and they're like, oh, like you're such an expert, like I'm gonna go with you now. It's more so just, you know, providing value and stuff. So that's awesome. What about any reservations about once you finally got this deal under contract? Did you have any buyers at the time? And I know that's a question I get from a lot of new students, a lot of subscribers watching these YouTube videos is like, you know, Stephen, I don't have any buyers or connections in the community. And so what was that process, just in a nutshell, like for you, Blair, as far as, you know, having established buyers and stuff like that?
Yeah, so once you get the house under contract, now you think like, now what? So I got the house under contract just a few days before Christmas, and the whole entire world like hits the pause button at Christmas time. So I'm just like, okay, so I'm going to have this like extra chunk of time, and the contract is limited. You only have X amount of days to like execute, and no one is going to want to talk to me on Christmas Eve about this contract. So I did what I could the Friday before Christmas. I think I got it under contract like the Thursday and like evening or something like that. And so the Friday before Christmas, I had a few contacts, just a few people that I knew. Excuse me. So I mentioned that there are some people that we're associated with that are contractors.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
These contractors have done business with some investors who flip houses and things like that. So I had some very secondhand contacts that I had been kind of just communicating a little bit with, just to start that ball rolling of like, hey, I'm going to be offering you something in the future. I didn't say that to them. I just started reaching out to them and like asking them some questions. And these big time people who seem really intimidating are actually mostly pretty gracious, is what I've learned, because most of them have been in our position at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you send them a really good deal, they want the really good deal. So there's not really anything to be afraid of with that. You know, you will run into the occasional jerk, I'm sure, but most people who are in real estate investing are very easy to talk with. So I just soft pitched the deal to those few contacts that I had, who very politely told me no thank you. But what was really great is they did say, I will pass it along to other people that I know, whether they did or not. So Christmas came and went. We hosted Christmas at our house.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents left the morning of the 26th, and I sat down at the table and I just looked at John Paul and I just asked him, I'm just like, okay, like, what do I do? Like, what do I do now? And John Paul said, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. He's like, you do everything that Steve said. He's like, you have it all written down step by step, and you just start and you go through those things. Because I was going through another moment of just like, I don't know what to do. And like those voices are like talking to me again, just like, you know,
Yes.
these people, you know, like the people that I soft pitched it to, they told me no thank you. And like, I don't know how to make this Craigslist ad. Like, I sold my bike on Craigslist at one time, you know, but like, how do I make a Craigslist ad for a house? And we got to get bandit signs, and, you know, we got to make a bunch of phone calls. And like, I'm just like having this like moment. And so my husband is like, just chill out and just go through the list of things that Steve told you to do. So I said, okay. And I just put my head down and I went through the motions of everything that you share in your modules of how to get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it all on, and my phone started ringing off the hook. And I had to turn my phone to silent when I put my children to bed that night. And I was answering emails about the house from interested people till almost midnight. And I had showings set up with it the next day. And we had people out to the house, and it just all went so quickly. I didn't know what to expect. And I know that there will be times in the future for me where it won't all go so quickly, but it went fast, and we got that baby sold from the time I put it on, like out into the open market, like out there for the world, to the time when I had the buyer come in and sign the contract and put the earnest money down. It was less than 24 hours.
I remember that. I remember it being around the holidays and you guys having a busy holiday, and we did as well. And we're doing our, you know, walkie-talkie Voxer message. And then you're like, all right, I'm turning on the marketing. I'm doing, you know, these steps in order. And then just 24 hours later, it was like a whirlwind. You had so much interest. And like, you were like, I just got to pinch myself. And you had the earnest money check, a $2,000 non-refundable check. And, you know, the buyer signing the contract very graciously, a big time buyer that is too, that you've, you know, since developed a cool relationship that you found does a lot of cool stuff in Detroit. So just, yeah, I'm so grateful to see that, you know, come to fruition for you, because I know what it's like, those voices and just, you know, all that when you're going through that, and the unknown, the fear of like what is going to happen, and trying and wanting to do the right thing, and then a few people in the beginning telling you no. It's that internal testing for sure.
Yeah.
So what, so in wrapping up here, Blair, I got a couple more questions here for you. So just in a nutshell, what was the day of closing like for you and John Paul getting this first deal closed? Maybe describe the feeling from when you first started to like seeing this first like milestone come to fruition, what that meant for you and your family. And we'll just go with that.
Sure. So you would think that like there would be jumping and screaming and celebrating and just, like popping bottles all over the place and, and dumping buckets of Gatorade on each other. And no, it was just really peaceful. So like I said, I kind of started on this journey about 5 years ago when I left teaching, and I've been trying a slew of everything in between that didn't work. And then, I launched into this with you. And I was just like, even though those voices speak to you, the overarching like feeling was, no, this is going to work and it has to work. And part of, why taking on a mentor is so important is part of it is the accountability and just knowing that like someone else besides like your family members or your kids, like someone is like gunning for you. And then also just kind of like holding you accountable. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of peace on that day because once we had locked this guy into a contract, I just knew that it was going to work. I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know how it was going to all play out. I didn't know how long it would take. But the day of closing was just very peaceful. And it was another, like, everything just went eerily smooth. And I kept right up with the title company, asking them questions and checking in and being very diligent about everything. And every time I would ask the question, they would just be like, we're good. Nope, we're good. Everything's all set. And like the day of closing, like I kept double checking and I kept double checking. We closed on a Friday. And so that was kind of nerve wracking because the following Monday was a government holiday. So it's like, we were going to have a 3-day weekend shutdown. If we didn't get it closed on Friday afternoon, which we really wanted it to be like earlier in the week in the morning, it just didn't work out that way. But it was okay that things didn't work out like exactly how I wanted them to, trying to control it in that way because it still all worked out. And I just told my husband, I'm just like, I can't believe the amount of like peace that I have. Like you would think that I would just be jumping up and down screaming, but it's just like, no, it's just, this is what I do now.
Exactly.
This is who I am and this is what I do. And it's just a thing. It's an awesome thing. It felt awesome. It felt awesome to see that deposit in my bank account and, just to make something like that happen. Like I had said, I was doing a little bit of online marketing before. My last sale that I made doing the whatever I was doing before was $10. $10 went into my account. And so with this deal, seeing that change, you know what I mean? Seeing that much money come into my account from one transaction, it was like, I like this.
I can get used to this. But I absolutely love your demeanor, Blair. And that just is the makings of, first of all, a grounded and humble spirit, but also just, I just love that because, like you said, it's not about popping bottles and like, oh, what can we go out and buy now and all this fancy stuff. No. It's like, no, we've been working hard. We're building something here. We're helping people. Like, this is wonderful. And we're just going to keep it all in stride and move straight forward. And so I absolutely love that. That's, definitely awesome.
That's just one more point I want to make is that's a wonderful part of being in this real estate business is when I was in sales before, I was trying to sell people something. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like the feeling of being salesy, being a salesperson. That's absolutely not what we're doing here. We're not selling anybody anything. We're offering them this opportunity. And like I said, I had to do a ton of marketing because not everybody needs that opportunity. You really have to sift and dig through who needs this opportunity. And this guy that we bought this house from, he needed this opportunity. There was no way he was going to sell this on the open market. There's no way he was going to find a buyer who needed a mortgage with all of the hoops that lenders have you jump through. There's no way it was going to sit, or he was going to have to dump a bunch of money into it. He needed that money. He needed it like right now. Like, I need this money right now. And that was such a beautiful feeling of like, I'm not an icky salesperson.
Yes.
Like, this is mutually beneficial. And then my buyer that purchased it from me, obviously we upsold it to him. He was so more than happy to purchase this home because like you mentioned, he was a big time buyer. He knew what he was doing. He saw what we were selling it for and he saw what he could potentially get out of it. So he's going to really benefit from it as well. So it was just all sorts of big, warm, fuzzy feels, you know what I mean? Which was so different than the other sales and marketing that I have done. You know, it's like I said, you're not selling anybody anything. You're offering them an opportunity.
Exactly.
You just have to find those people.
Exactly. It's doing marketing and being able to provide, a solution, and that's education. There's a lot of times where, I'm talking with a seller and I'm like, Miss Jones, this actually may be a better fit if you went ahead with a realtor. Like, here's a connection. Looks like you're looking for top dollar. So it's not about trying to trick them or twist them or, be overly aggressive or all this stuff. You're really, it's almost like a doctor. Like, you're diagnosing, you're asking them some questions, you're painting some pictures of, the different routes and the different options they can go with and how yours, fits into that, and then asking them a few more diagnosis questions. And then you're like, well, here's what we could do. It's cool if it works. It's cool if it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like that's a part that really attracted me to this too. It's, that we can really serve people in that way. And so, so wrapping up here, Blair, one thing I was going to ask you is if you could talk to yourself back when you first started either your whole entrepreneur journey like 5-ish years ago, or even just when you first started this real estate wholesaling journey, what would you do differently if you started over today, and why, or any regrets in there?
It's so hard. It's so hard to say that you would do something different, because if you changed anything about your past, then you wouldn't be where you are now. And I certainly don't want to change where we are today. One thing that I would have to say is that there is so much learning and discovery in the journey. And that sounds really like cliche and hokey, but there really is. And that is something that, like, unfortunately, like people who are in the normal everyday 9-to-5, grind, they're in the corporate world, or they've got a career of something, they're not ever going to experience that. Like, there's the journey of college, and then there's the journey of like figuring out your career and climbing the ladder. But this is like self-discovery at its most raw, and like, it's real. And I understand that there are entrepreneurial like degrees that you can pursue now. It's not really anything that I had heard of growing up. It's just like, but I know that there are now. Like, I have a young cousin who's going to be majoring in entrepreneurship. It's like, what even is that? But but no, the journey that you go through is so worth it. And just, like, I don't think that I would change anything. It would have been cool to have done this 5 years ago and be financially 5 years ahead. But then I wouldn't be in the place where I am now. I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't know what I know. Like, I guess it's like street smarts. I guess if you could say that, just street smarts from having to like just scramble and dig and like build something out of nothing. I feel like I've literally like built something out of like nothing, because we put so much like stock and emphasis on our college degree.
Right.
I don't regret going to college. I don't regret my degree or my education at all. But like, I'm not using it. And if I was, I just wouldn't really be making a whole lot of money. Like, not to talk, negatively about the public education system, but we're just at a point in time in our, like, just economically, where if you are in public education and you're listening to me right now, you feel my feels, like, you get it. Like, the struggle is real. You're working so hard and you're putting in so much time and effort, and like the payout is just so poor. And so I just feel like all of the time that I spent in college versus all of the time that I spent trying to be an entrepreneur, those two educations are on par with each other. And one I have student loan debt for, and this one I do not. I don't have student loan debt for this like real world education that I gained. So long-winded answer to your question, but like, no, I wouldn't change a thing, because then things would be different, and I don't want things to be different.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more what you said about education. And I feel the same way. I went to college for 4 years. I'm very blessed and grateful from it. That's where I met my wife and just amazing memories and stuff like that. But owning my own business for these last, better part of 10 years and all the trials and failure and pain and self-discovery and absolutely falling on my face and learning different aspects of business and how to be productive and just all the real stuff that's like a lot of times not taught in school and things like that. Like it's just I've learned so much more from owning my own business. But again, I look back at that time of going to college being grateful, but like you said, one I have student loans from and one that I don't. So I couldn't agree more with you. I think that is a very good point. And so so final question for you, Blair. Where do you plan on going from here? What's next for you?
So after this, I'm going to I'm just going to keep on going. I've been reading a lot of books on business. So if anybody is interested in books, there's an author named Mike McAllowitz, and he has a few books, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, The Pumpkin Plan, Profit First. So I've been reading through those books. I read a ton of professional and personal development type books. The 4-Hour Work Week was the first type of book like that I ever read. And I read that the summer, like I resigned from teaching in June and I read that book the following July. And that book just really changed my life. And it's that book changed my life only because it's like that was the first book that I read that even talked about like, there is a different lifestyle out there outside of the 9-to-5, and you can have it if you just change your mindset. So I've been reading a lot of books to shift my mindset. And so now that my mindset is there and I've done this and I've established something, so now I'm reading books on like, okay, so how can I build my business? How can I scale my business as far as like managing the finances of it and actually setting up like different accounts. And, a certain percentage of this should go here, and a certain percentage of that should go here. And this is how you pay your taxes. And this is how if you want to hire employees in the future. So I actually have plans to hire an assistant because I am a stay-at-home mom. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I have my 2 little boys. And what I guess I never mentioned throughout this whole video, which would really speak to any women out there who are stay-at-home moms, is I did this whole thing during nap time. Nap time, Nap time is when I ran my business, or my husband would come home and like take the boys out to play for like a couple of hours, or like my mom would come and take them. I would do like second shift, with my husband. He would come home from teaching school and then he would just take over, and I'd just sit like in my bedroom or at the dining room table. And sometimes I would be up till 2, 3 in the morning, but I didn't do that for very long, but it was worth it. Like, just thinking back to like, hey, remember when I would sit at the dining room table till 3 in the morning, typing up my letters and like, just assessing all of my leads and things like that. So yeah, the plans for the future is just to scale the business and continue to grow, and to hire an assistant to help me with some things, because life is busy, but you can make it work, and that's part of the reason why I know, it took me so long to do my first deal, is I was just doing this with a few hours a day. Right. And a lot of times those times were interrupted hours of the day, because my oldest son doesn't always take a nap. That's not guaranteed. My husband isn't always able to take the boys. My mom isn't always able to take the boys. So if you are, a stay-at-home mom or a work-at-home mom, or you've got a different job, you're a parent at any sort of level, you're still in your corporate job, you're still teaching school, you can make this happen. You can pull together 5 minutes and 10 minutes and whatever. You can absolutely, see this come to fruition, even if you don't feel like you have the time for it. You do.
Excellent. Well, Blair, I just want to thank you for coming on today and, doing this case study / interview. And I just know that there are so many out there that can resonate with your story and and your background and what you have going on. And so, and the book recommendations, which you mentioned, by the way, those are some very, very good books. I know the authors that you're talking about. Those are awesome recommendations. But I just want to thank you again for your time.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
excited to continue working with you and see what you
Yep.
accomplish. And this is literally just the beginning. So getting, very excited. Thank you guys for watching this video, and thank you, Blair, for coming on.
Yeah, yep. Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video.